Hello, everyone. I'm Stephanie Hamill. Welcome to In Focus. The Democrats are continuing on with their assault on the sexes. President Biden's nominee for Assistant Secretary of Health, Dr. Rachel Levine, would be the country's first openly transgender federal official if confirmed by the Senate. Now, Levine is a strong supporter of transgender medical procedures, even if they involve children. Yes, children. Senator Rand Paul, who is also a medical doctor, pressed Levine about minors and if they can comprehend the long-term effects of gender reassignment surgery. In a typical fashion, Biden's nominee dodged the question with a carefully crafted and obviously coached canned response.
Culture is now normalizing the idea that minors can be given hormones to prevent their biological development of their secondary sexual characteristics. Dr. Levine, you have supported both allowing minors to be given hormone blockers to prevent them from going through puberty, as well as surgical destruction of a minor's genitalia. Like surgical mutilation, hormonal interruption of puberty can permanently alter and prevent secondary sexual characteristics.
Transgender medicine is a very complex and nuanced field with robust research and standards of care that have been developed. And if I am fortunate enough to be confirmed as the Assistant Secretary of Health, I would look forward to working with you and your office.
I'm alarmed that you won't say with certainty that minors should not have the ability to make the decision to take hormones that will affect them for the rest of their life. Will you make a more firm decision on whether or not minors should be involved in these decisions?
Senator, transgender medicine is a very complex and nuanced field, and if confirmed to the position of Assistant Secretary of Health, I would certainly be pleased to come to your office and talk with you and your staff about the standards of care and the complexity of this field.
Let it go into the record that the witness refused to answer the question.
Children aren't capable of making such a life-altering decision, obviously. Now, advocates who support efforts to stop the unethical treatment of children are asking, how can we justify having someone in charge of Health and Human Services who doesn't understand basic biology? It's an excellent question, and we should be demanding answers. Join me now from Washington, D.C., Senator Rand Paul. Thank you, Senator, for joining me. Senator, you are being called a lot of names by the mainstream media for asking some basic questions. And so the so-called party of science, as we know, isn't actually about science.
I think people deserve to hear this debate because it is very much out of the mainstream to believe that children not only can make decisions, life-changing decisions, or even surgical decisions without their parents' consent, but also the question I asked this doctor was, could a child's decision override a parent who says, I'm not consenting to this? These people are so radical and so extreme, they would allow a 10-year-old child to override a parent's consent. So the parents say, no, we're not going to do this. A 10-year-old says, no, mommy, daddy, I want to do this. And the doctor is going to go with the child. That's a real problem. And the government ultimately makes decisions here. So now we have this doctor who's going to be in a high-ranking position controlling government funds. I don't want government funds going to people that are promoting the idea that a child could make these decisions. And I asked her specifically also about the idea that she had said street kids should speed up the process. So the surgery would be before age 18, and these hormones, a girl getting boys' hormones, would happen before age 18. And she says she was fine with speeding the process up for street kids. Well, do you know what street kids means? It means your parents aren't around, or you have mental illness, or you have some reason why no one's there to protect you from these people, and she would speed up the process. That's alarming. And in many ways, I think this smacks of child abuse. And so every self-respecting person should stand up to people like this. And in no way did I ever attack this person for their adult decision to make, that she made. I never even referred to it. Yeah. I never referred to anything about her. I only asked the question about minors. She refused to answer the question because I think she knew her answer would be so extreme that people from both sides of the aisle would recoil at her answer.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of have a feeling what her answer was, which is why she didn't want to answer it. That being said, I mean, the name calling that all these articles that I've read, it's transphobic attack. And as you pointed out, it wasn't. And during the hearing, we didn't play the clip, but you were pointing out that children can't even go to the hospital and get stitches.
Yeah, I've worked as an emergency room doctor. I worked for several years in my training and earlier years as an ER doctor. We would not treat a child unless they were needing to be resuscitated. Anything beyond that, we would always wait for the parents to arrive. Parents are a big part of making the decisions for children. And frankly, the American College of Pediatricians has looked at this. If you leave kids alone who play a lot of imaginary games and have a lot of imaginary sort of ideas, 85–95% of kids end up not wanting to do this. But if you start them at age 10 before they're able to make a decision, all of a sudden they're not going in through any of the natural changes that go through with puberty. All of a sudden, if they get all this reinforcement from people, do you think when you go to Dr. Levine's clinic, she has anyone there advocating that you don't do it? No, I would think the only people you hear from are these self-reaffirming, and it becomes this self-reinforcing social pressure to actually do something that a lot of people would have a different idea were they allowed to mature and grow out of this.
Yeah, and you think even aside from children, just adults in general who've had some of these surgeries, sometimes they regret it. I've read a lot of cases about that. That being said, this is all kind of part of this effort to blur the line between sexes. And we know that the Biden administration is like moving forward with this very fast. And we saw that they're, trying to allow boys to compete in women's sports. And what is this all about?
Yeah, it's the same way. I just voted today against the Department of Education nominee because he was from Connecticut, where they allowed 2 boys to compete in girls' sports. They're going to destroy girls' sports, frankly. And if you've ever, some of my nieces were great athletes. They'd work out 6–8 hours a day. They went and played college sports. But should that be taken away, by some boy, some 6'4" boy who's going to compete with the average height of women being 5'5", 5'6"? And we're going to let them compete in the same sports. It's completely unfair. And there have been a few people from the left, Martina Navratilova and others, who have spoken out against having boys and men in girls' sports. And we need more of it. We need more brave people on the left. Frankly, my wife says, where are the feminists? People who believe in strong women should say that it's unfair to have men competing in women's and girls' sports.
Yeah, well, people are afraid of the backlash. They don't want to speak out. They don't want to be called the names. You're very brave, and on the issues you care about, you are always speaking out, so we appreciate you for that. Speaking of other issues, the COVID-19 relief bill, the $1.9 trillion plan, that is totally outrageous. If you look at actually what the money's going to, it's not going to help the American people. The Democrats, once again, wedged in all of their pet projects.
Yeah, and if you look at the virus right now, it's on the down, it's really spiraling down. There are people now predicting that within a month, we may well be beyond most of this. Employment has come back as the governors have led up. So the answer really is to open the economy, not to print up money and give it to people. The problem is it's always popular to give people stuff. So if you take a poll and say, do you want $1,400? Who's going to say no? But we have to be thinking about the ramifications of so much debt and what it'll do to the country, what it'll ultimately do to our currency. And so, no, I worry about our kids and our grandkids and the future of our country. And if printing up money were a good idea, why not do it every month? Why not give people $2,000 every month, every week? Why not give people $100,000? They'd go spend it. It's like one of the retailers, I think Target came out in favor of it. It's like, well, yeah, it works in the short run. But in the end run, what happens to your currency is what happens in Venezuela, where prices go up 1,000% a month. What ends up happening is the store shelves are depleted. You have rationing, you have price controls, and you destroy an economy. In Venezuela, they eat their pets because they destroyed their currency, and now they've destroyed their civilization. It could happen here if we're not careful. So people should be a little concerned when someone offers you something for free. Think about what the catch is.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great point. As we know, after Biden was sworn in, all of a sudden, a lot of these blue states were willing to ease their lockdown restrictions, which is great. I don't think we should be on lockdown. We should definitely be careful and do the safety measures and whatnot. But as we've seen state by state that the lockdown didn't necessarily work, wearing triple masks doesn't necessarily help. So my question is, we saw the CDC today actually say that they're concerned about states reopening. They actually want states to go back to lockdowns again. And so, how much longer is this going to go on for? The CDC says that they're concerned about the new strains of COVID-19 that are popping up in some of the states. Where do you stand on this?
I think people need to understand that doctors who work for the government it sort of self-selects for people who have an elitist point of view, a left-wing point of view, that they know what's best for you. So they tend to be the overly cautious Dr. Fauci types who say, well, we need to prove, or you need to prove to me that someone who's been vaccinated can't still get it again. And it's like, well, I thought all the evidence of the vaccine was good that you don't get it again. But he wants 1,000% proof that you can't transmit it. Well, if we wait for that, we'll never open up. So these people are setting up a scenario for failure. They don't want you to get rid of your mask after you've been vaccinated or after you've already gotten the disease. And so if we let these people rule our lives, you'll be in masks for the rest of your lives. So people are going to have to stand up for themselves and say, look, in a free society, I get to make this decision. I've either had the disease or I've been vaccinated, and I don't want to live, like the Bidens in their basement. I want to get out and live my life again. People are going to have to stand up. And when they do by the tens of thousands, we'll get our country back. But really, it's time for people to stand up and say, we've had enough of you, Dr. Fauci. We're going to make our own decisions.
Yeah, and there's concern that there are a lot of people who don't want to get the vaccine, but it's not really that exciting to get the vaccine if you're still going to have to wear a mask and still be on lockdown, as you pointed out. It doesn't really make any sense, does it?
Right. Everybody should get to make a decision. I'm for the vaccine, but I would not ever force anybody to get it. The disease is on the downslope because of natural immunity and because that's the course of diseases that ultimately they do wither away. The vaccine is helping. We have 65 million people have had the vaccine. We've got another 29 million people have had it. And there's got to be another 10, 20 million people who didn't know they had it, but had it. So there's a significant amount of immunity out there. And I think we're going to do much better. I'm sad that we've lost lives from this, but I think we're going to get better. And somebody needs to promote optimism, and somebody needs to promote the idea that we can get back to normal. So if nobody else is going to do it, I'm going to. Throw away your mask if you've been vaccinated. If you're a young person and you've had it, throw away your mask and live again.
Absolutely.
There, I said it.
Maybe you can break down the science on this for me. It's a big question. So I don't know if you've been on a commercial flight lately, but they're filling up every single seat on each plane. So how is it that you can fly next to people like that, but you can't eat at a restaurant for the most part? And so, especially in California, a lot of these restaurants, now that some of them are open, they're 25% capacity, but these restaurants aren't going to be able to continue functioning and surviving at 25% capacity.
All of the mitigation strategies of Dr. Fauci are unproven and pseudoscience. So you tell me, you walk into a restaurant and you look and there's 300 people in the restaurant eating with their masks off, but they tell you to wear your mask for the 10 steps between the door and your table, then you can take your mask off. There is no science to that. There's no proof that it works at all. But when you make requirements on restaurants that they can only have 25% or 50% occupancy, you destroy their business, and there's no science to support any of it. We've just backed down from common sense, and we let people like Dr. Fauci run our lives. He's been nothing but wrong. There is no science. In fact, Stanford did a study in 10 different countries about whether masks work or the mask mandates work. And guess what? The incidence of disease rose as we added more mandates. There's no scientific study showing that we reduced the incidence of disease when we added mandates. If you want to wear one and you're at risk, by all means do. But you shouldn't force everybody else to do something that has no scientific basis behind it and has done nothing to change the trajectory of the disease.
Yeah, absolutely. All good points. Again, as I said, it was a little bit mind-boggling that you can fill up a plane, but you can't even have a restaurant at 50% capacity. So as you pointed out, it's arbitrary and it's contrary to science. Well, Senator, we really appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.